Who wants to be experimented on? I certainly don't, and I certainly don't want to do that when it comes to spending this type of cash, right? I'm Michael Fury, and today we're talking about the Venom BlackBook Zero 14 Phantom, an amazing computer and one we're going to do a detailed look at, because I know a lot of people have thought about it, but maybe you might be light on some of the details. So this is your chance to have a look at each and every part of the computer, and let's dive straight in. So firstly, why Venom? I've heard about these guys making high performance notebooks for a long time, but of course everyone's making the same claim in the market. Not only that, it's really subjective, the term performance. What makes a good performing computer, and also what do you need it for? Some of you might be gaming, some of you might be just doing documents, some of you might be using super heavy Excel spreadsheets, or some of you may be in the kind of Photoshop and kind of that heavy graphics and processing demands. Ultimately, what really resonates with me as a consultant, we do this when we work with businesses, is around incremental improvement. And that's very much Venom's focus when it comes to designing the computer, and also making sure that they're always looking continuous improvement in each and every area of the computer, whether that's battery life, the web camera, the sound, the keypad, you name it, they're looking for that continuous improvement. So for me, that really struck a chord, and that really resonated about making sure I've got a computer which is starting to differentiate and be, continuously advancing. And it gave me the confidence that actually this could well be the one for me. So what gives them the right to say they're the best computer in the market? Well, they've been doing this since 2010. And what their focus is and what their whole kind of mantra is about being the best in the market, right? So they've got two of this series. So they've got their BlackBook Pro, not to be mistaken for the MacBook Pro, and they've also got the BlackBook Zero range. So the Pro is really about being focused on the graphics or the GPU or the graphics processing unit. That really is about that kind of really heavy ability to 3D render, so amazing for kind of gaming and things like that. Whereas the Zero series is about being light and portable. For me, that's far more important than its ability to kind of make sure I can look great on a Call of Duty or something like that. This is really about convenience, but also I need to have that processing unit. So in my day-to-day job, I'm basically consulting to maybe 3 or 4 companies in a single day. And so I maybe have different windows open, different spreadsheets, different presentations, you name it. And I've had multiple computers now, as we'll go into in a bit more detail, which just simply couldn't handle the amount of processing or the variation that is in my day. And also, more importantly, I wanted to make sure that it was mine, not and kind of related to anyone that I may be working with. And so that's why I've gone down this road. But we're today going to take a close look at the BlackBook Zero range, which are primarily built around the CPU. And they're two fundamentally different designs, but most users will be needing the BlackBook Zero. So what I've got here then in my left hand is the BlackBook Zero 14 Phantom, one of the newest ones, and in fact, I bought this with my own money. So just to touch on the commercial side of this video, look, I'm a customer of Venom, and they asked me, given my enthusiasm, to actually share about this in a video. Yep, have they covered the cost of it? For sure, because making sure it's the right editing these days is really, really important. However, I don't actually get paid directly for this video, but if you end up buying a computer and you basically reference that this video was helpful, I will get a kind of a kickback to say thank you for helping with this video. So ultimately, I hope this helps Venom because I'm really passionate about the computers, but ultimately I hope this helps you because I'm also passionate about people getting access to the right computers who can actually do the job that we want it to do. So without further ado, let's dive into a bit more about why a BlackBook. The computer I've got here is actually one of the world's first Venom BlackBook Zero 14 Phantoms. So obviously purchased it myself with my own cash, and it's now my daily driver. It's replaced my MacBook Air, and I'll come on to that in just a sec. And I bought it from shopvenom.com. So it ships globally from that site, and you can see some of the prices and where they start from in some of the local currencies that you can purchase with. Now, basically it comes direct to you, so DHL delivered mine, and they've got a partnership. It's actually really quite unique to have a business which demonstrates or operates this approach. And there's standardized pricing no matter where you are in the world. and regardless of what kind of fluctuation in terms of currencies you might be dealing with. So that direct to consumer piece allows that to be cut out the middleman, so you're getting better value as well. The BlackBook for me is actually replacing two computers, and it gives you an idea as to the kind of strength or computer demand that I'm placing on some of my PCs. So this is an HP Envy, a kind of slim line, and I'll go through how that kind of matches up to the the BlackBook in a second. And then I've got the MacBook Air here. Again, they've both been really good, and so I'm used to both a PC and an Apple environment, and especially when I'm talking or working with different clients, of course, it pays to be familiar with both systems. However, what I found is that the processing power for both of those was really underwhelming, especially when you're trying to run, Excel spreadsheets, you've got presentations going on, and you might be, having external monitors at the same time. So I found when it comes to that piece and that kind of flexibility, nothing really comes close when it comes to the BlackBook. So we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a sec. But when it comes to the screen, the keyboard, I found the touchpad as well. It's far superior when it comes to the look and feel, and the weight of it is just extraordinary. I think it's actually this weight bit which is kind of the most deceptive. Here's the size of it, here's the kind of what it looks like in terms of profile. I'll just put you a kind of a side by side next to, this is the Envy, so you can kind of see, I'll just pop down the screen one sec so you can see how they kind of contrast up. That's what they kind of look like. So very similar. The BlackBook's a little chunkier, but we're talking infinitely, maybe a millimeter or two. Here's the actual MacBook Air. So here's how they kind of pair up like that. And here's my iPad as well, which is what I use on a day-to-day basis. Here's how it kind of syncs up from that perspective. In terms of similar size, you can see there, this is the MacBook, the iPad over here, and you can see it's a bit bigger. On this one, this is the MacBook here, the Air, and so look, it's but look, this one is like starting to get heavy already. This one, look, it's got a bit of weight to it, but my God, it's so light compared to what you might expect. Probably very similar, actually. Yeah, it's almost dead similar to the iPad. And so if you've got one of these, look, I swear by these things. They're amazing. Obviously, you've got the pencil and things like that. Super convenient. But imagine an iPad which can actually, is good for any meeting, good for a presentation. It's super lightweight, and you can stick it in a sleeve as well. So what makes the actual processing power superior when it comes to the BlackBook? Well, ultimately it's the SSD, so the solid state drive. On the Zero 14 Phantom, absolutely basically kills any other notebook, including the brand new M1 MacBook Pros. That it's literally 2.5 times faster as standard what you would get in those. So look, why as I mentioned this? Well, ultimately, processing is typically the bottleneck when it comes to fast computing for a long time, and it's actually the speed as to which you can access and read those files that you need. And what I'm finding here is that I can be sat in a cafe or a workplace with the national broadband, which is what we call fast internet here in Australia. And previously, you could be sat on fast internet, but your computer's not actually that fast. These days, fast internet also on my computer means like you are on that web page in a second. And that's been super helpful. It just means you can speed everything up. And you're also getting, when it comes to larger spreadsheets, so if I'm crunching maybe a profit and loss statement or something like that, or a PDF, I'm finding it can handle that much quicker than you might be able to normally kind of get used to, perhaps on a slower computer. It's also why if you took any old computer and put this new SSD into it, Windows 10 will run like really fast. Software programs don't want to make software that's kind of CPU intensive, and so it means whatever they're programming is going to work on basically less machines. So if they are too resource intensive, they have less platforms to be able to sell their software on. So the idea is to make it at least kind of CPU intensive as possible. So as least CPU intensive as possible. And so, why is that important though is how your processor works and how it works with everything else in your system. Basically Venom calls this harmonious design, where every aspect of a system harmoniously works with every other component, complementing kind of each other. This is in opposition to what they call Frankenstein machines, which have great sounding singular parts that have been mashed together, but whilst on paper they kind of sound good, in the real world, they're actually quite clunky, and they haven't really been thought through when trying to kind of piece it all together. So, that idea then is where BlackBook and their approach has been so extraordinary. So why did Venom choose Intel over other processors? So of course, the other choice would have been either an AMD offering or an ARM-based processor, a bit like Apple's M1. So, ARM processors for Windows offer several major hurdles that basically need to be resolved first. So ARM processors like the M1 are not x86 processors. And look, I'm not going to go into what the details is on that, but basically x86 processors are the main architecture most software for the PC have been developed for since day one of operations effectively. So in a Windows environment where developers are free to develop whatever program and application they want, which of course is really helpful for people like you and me, you really don't want them experimenting with different architecture, because what if someone designs something on Earth to run on Windows? They don't want it to have it all fall over if there's an update or something like that. So because of the Windows being an open architecture, of course that requires a certain type of processor to be able to handle that type of experience, as it were. So that then speaks to Venom's approach here. They simply didn't want to experiment on their customers with such a processor, and it's a core design philosophy which I really am proud of the BlackBook being kind of holding true to, because they go with true, tried and tested technology first, because who wants to be experimented on? I certainly don't, and I certainly don't want to do that when it comes to spending this type of cash, right? And that's, in my view, that's exactly what Microsoft did when they released their Surface Pro recently. I think it was a Pro X. That had an ARM processor, and while it was heaps better than expected, the bar was super low, and it was still a heartbreaking experiment. And to hear they've discontinued it, well, I just really feel for the people who've actually gone ahead with that. So the reality is Windows just doesn't run well with ARM, and I can only imagine how some of the smaller software companies' applications could run on it as it's rolled out. So look, I'm the type of person that doesn't want to be paid to be experimented on. And my time for someone else's technology development is not the play I want to be involved with. So look, props to Venom for kind of taking a bit of heat when it comes to choosing Intel as their provider. But ultimately their goal is to make the fastest and most reliable laptop computers. I simply, as a customer, I just want the best, right? So that, of course, though, leaves the AMD situation being the elephant in the room. So, obviously this rivalry has gone on for a long time. Every 10 years or so, AMD makes a major comeback, and, it's now the next kind of fancy thing. And certainly this kind of keeps Intel on their toes. And look, I'm a big advocate for, competition and, capitalism. But first, we need to kind of distinguish mobile processors and desktop processors, right? And so I'm going to focus on mobile processors to begin with, which are designed for laptop computers. And while the argument predominantly is for Intel versus AMD's for desktop processors. So obviously that's a very different argument, and it really isn't relevant to this. So let's think about desktop versus mobile processors, right? Think about a desktop computer. It's going to sit in the corner of your office. We might have a fan going. You've got the room for that in the casing. You've got a single power supply. And so contrast that to your laptop, which you're going to be sticking in your bag, moving between different locations. So the actual versatility and the actual requirements placed on those kind of processors are very, very different. So let's have a look at how that kind of, the strains that puts on different types of chips and how that kind of relates to what we've got in the BlackBook. So firstly speaking, because the PC has a consistent and unlimited power supply, then it doesn't have to worry about the amount of energy it's drawing from the battery. Of course, you've got heaps of space in there, so you can do whatever you want. And the cooling system in a desktop could be really fancy. It might have some kind of liquid cooled scenarios. Obviously, fans are very common, but again, none of those are you necessarily going to have, or do you want in a really noisy laptop? Is it kind of trying to cool the processor chip down? So think about that. When it comes to AMD versus Intel, I'm going to be mainly talking about here the mobile processing units, and it gets pretty complicated, as you may be aware. So there is the i3, the i5, and the i7, which that's good, better, and best. But they've also got different classes in there. So they've got the H, the U, the Y, and I'm even going to mention the G, which is nuts, right? So it can get really complex really quick. There's of course the i9, but that is for desktop computers only, and so we're not going to be talking about the i9. So let's just talk about the BlackBook Pro, right? So the minimum Intel chip in there is the Core i7, and so nearly all the BlackBook Zeros are equipped with the Core i7, but there's different types in different ones. So if you think about the i7H line, that runs on a 35-watt high-performance mobile optimized design. And so that's found in the Venom BlackBook Pro 16 and also the BlackBook Pro 17. The U line, which is a bit different and runs on the 15-watt, that's found in the BlackBook Venom Zero Phantom family. And there's also the lesser-known fanless design, which is the 4.5 ultra-low-powered Y line. Obviously super low power consumption, and it makes for a beautiful kind of solid state, silent running computer. It's in one of the earlier models of the Venom computers, but I think it's getting discontinued, that version. So, it's great, but in terms of it can often lack the power. So, all of these together are marketed as the Core i7 processor, which makes it really confusing when we're talking about it in this kind of context. And so just keep in mind that basically more power simply means more energy, and that means more heat. So that means when you've got the laptop on your legs, you're starting to have to wear shorts, or you start sweating because it's leaving these really kind of hot marks on your pants. So for each processor, they're very, very specific in terms of the use. And so, in a MuscleBook, which is what they call the Venom BlackBook Pro, that's got the Core i7 processor that consumes twice the power of the same branded Core i7 processor. Within the Ultraportable range, obviously the one I've got, we're talking about the BlackBook 014 Phantom and also the 014 Phantom, which achieves twice the battery life and is half the weight of the same branded Core i7 BlackBook Pro. So the BlackBook Pros have also accompanied dedicated 3D graphics cards, which basically consume 85 watts. And so their design is very different. But ultimately, this is also why they've got a much bigger power supply that is 150 watts, 4 times the size of what comes with the BlackBook Zero. Now, if you've been able to follow this so far, props to you. So basically there's those 3 suffixes, the H, the U, the Y. I mentioned there's also the G, which means it's basically a mobile U processor with kind of that inbuilt discrete graphics. So this design works really extremely well for the BlackBook Zero family, as these are designed to do everything except the kind of 3D rendering. So you can still play a ton of games on them. Call of Duty I downloaded just 2 days ago, but some of them are going to display better than others. And there's also a whole bunch which it even comes with on the website, on the Venom website, you can find out which games are purpose-built or can run perfectly on the computer. But when it comes to AMD mobile processors, there are 3 distinct subcategories, all marketed as the AMD Ryzen 7, 5, and 3. So again, super confusingly, the AMD Ryzen H lines, which will run on 35 to 54 watts varyingly, the AMD Ryzen U line on the 10 to 25, and the max temp of 105 degrees Celsius. So, there is the lesser known E line that runs on the 6 watts, but when comparing the processors between Ryzen and the AMD and Intel, you really need to compare the energy consumption. And that's why does Venom BlackBook Zero 14 not have the AMD Ryzen U processor? Well, it's exactly that. It's because the energy throttling, which leads to thermal throttling, has erratic cooling properties. And Venom tells me that whilst this is minor, over a long period, it's going to be noticeable. And so why is that an issue? Well, Venom offer a 7-year trade-in. So they're literally going to pay you cash to buy back your BlackBook, which you're going to buy today, and in 7 years' time. So you're not only a customer right now, but they're actually lining you up to be their supplier in 7 years' time, which I think is super smart. And you can talk about the sustainability of that, but ultimately it's a great business model, and it gives me a lot of reassurance as a customer to know that this is a valuable product, and it's going to be worth something in 7 years too, which is super cool. So they actually do care about your BlackBook 5 years from now, and it's sustainable, it's green, whatever you call it. But actually, it's amazing. The research shows that about 90% of BlackBook users are still using their same computer in 5 years. And that speaks to the performance, despite imagine the improvements in computers in the last 5 years alone, right? Isn't that amazing? And so I'm super excited with the Phantom that I'm going to be able to do that in 7 years' time. And I think this really comes back to the fundamental design principles of Venom. This 1% improvement, this continuous improvement which we're looking for in the computer itself. It aligns with me at a kind of a human level, and what I talk about with my customers, but also it's great to see that in a computer, and it's fundamentally part of their kind of harmonious design. They've actually thought about the different components rather than just kind of throwing it all together, made it look good and thrown some fancy marketing behind it, but actually it's a sack of crap when it comes to the use, and especially the long-term tail of it, which is I think why it's obvious why we've chosen Intel for this rather than some of the AMD alternatives. The Zero 14 Phantom has the Intel Core i7-1165G7 processor with an average temp range of 65 degrees and a max of 100 degrees, as opposed to the AMD equivalent, which would have been the AMD Ryzen 7 5800U, with a max temp of 105 degrees, with the AMD citing kind of typical temperatures that can hit 90 to 95 degrees by design. So, according to Venom, a Ryzen equivalent was going to be louder, as it needs more intervention from a fan. And from a longevity perspective, Venom says that basically the more something moves, the shorter the lifespan. And so, for someone who's going to buy my computer in 7 years, that's not that good. So, Venom also wanted to ensure that the Thunderbolt 4 was available, and it's still relatively kind of like an Intel thing. So this means that the main ultra-portable processor that was deemed to be the best, so why not choose a different Intel processor? Well, there's really just the two options. There's the Intel 1165G7 and the 1185G7 as well. So what's the difference? Well, let's just focus on where it's probably going to count most for the most number of people. And that really is, let's look at Microsoft Excel, right? So the 1185 is marginally slower at the 15 watt power consumption, and marginally faster at 28 watts compared to the 1165. But the difference is basically negligible, right? So, Acrobat PDF exporting is similar to the other single-threaded tests, in that the 1185 is faster than the 1165, but only when the additional frequency can be accessed. So, for that to happen, the CPU needs to be configured in its higher power state. And those gains aren't there at 15 watts. So, what we end up with is a negligible gain at 15 watts. Adobe Photoshop performance was slightly strange, in that the 1185 wasn't faster than the 1165 at 28 watts. So due to the differences in laptop configurations, at times the 1185 is slower and at times the 1185 is faster. So Venom took it to where it would count in a mobile platform, and mobility means running a battery on 15 watts, and that was really the main consideration. So what we're talking about is a very small difference, but I'm sure as you're learning from Venom, and why I'm such a big advocate for them, everything is actually very important. And in order to achieve that kind of intelligence performance, that kind of harmonious design where each part works to the best of their ability, it literally all does count. So, that's why the Venom BlackBook Zero 14 Phantom uses the 1165 G7, as the emphasis is portability. And so, it's more likely to run at 15 watts on a battery where the performance is better. And so now we've clarified why Venom have chosen this specific processor. Let's see how it kind of stacks up. And look, reviewers, I'm sure you've seen heaps of different reviews online. The reality is most people, don't really use the same benchmarking, that you often end up comparing apples with oranges. So let's just say, for argument's sake, the most likely approach you'll be using is comparing Chrome and Office 365. And because that's probably, at the end of the day, what's going to count most. Does that sound fair? I think so. So let's roll into that. Let's take a look at the Intel comparison. Now, of course, this is coming from an Intel source. And also, just a note that we're talking about the 1185 G7 chip rather than 1165. But as we've kind of talked about, they're fairly negligible in terms of the actual outcomes. But just take a look at this. It's talking about photo enhancement. It's talking about calculation and sorting of data in an Excel environment. It's also talking about PowerPoint. I would imagine, on a day-to-day basis, most people are kind of using those types of things. So for photo enhancement, it's almost 3 times as fast as the Apple M1 chip. In terms of PowerPoint, it's well over 2 times as fast. When it comes to using Excel, it's almost twice as fast for just on the kind of sorting large data. And then when it's doing it on a version 2 version of Excel, it's almost 3 times as fast. So anyone who's going to kind of argue that Apple's better, it may be better in some ways, but from a performance perspective, I think that's hard to validate. When it comes to a content side, let's take a quick look at the Adobe selection. You can see 1.3, it's 0.3 times quicker, it's 0.42 times quicker, and 0.72 is saying here. So again, Intel data, and I think it's important to also highlight, the reality here is that we might be talking about, Apple's might be doing it at 0.3 of a second, and Intel can do it, in a bit less than that. So it's going to be really negligible, probably from a day-to-day or human perspective. But even still, if you've got Apple mates who just kind of bang on about how good they are, this could be a useful slide to send to them. If we take a look at a gaming perspective now, obviously there's a whole bunch of games which don't even run on the M1. Obviously Intel's picked the bunch here and trying to highlight, to emphasize how great they are. Of course, there are a couple of things like Hitman clearly seems to be working really well on the M1, but across the let's say the broader spectrum, the 1185 G7 and the 1165 are clearly streets ahead when it comes to that kind of frames per second, which is really going to give you that kind of fluid motion when it comes to either interacting with a computer game or either watching it or playing it. That's what's going to give you much greater depth and much greater 3D kind of experience when it comes to playing these. And there's a big list on the right there, as you can see, of the different games which can really work well. So I think that kind of speaks for itself, but I think an important point nonetheless. So of course, as the software developers get used to the M1 processor, of course it's going to get better in terms of the applications which are being used on it. But ultimately, do you want to be a test dummy? I certainly don't. And so that's where the Intel chip here is clearly streets ahead. Now, I think an important point to note though is that we've talked heaps about the actual processor unit, But we all know, probably a lot of people who are more experienced than me know that the chip or the processor is just one part of the whole puzzle, and it hasn't actually been a bottleneck in terms of performance for a long time. And so we're going to talk now about the broader scheme of the BlackBook and actually have a look at how those things have kind of been pieced together in such an intricate way to make sure that you've got the best performing laptop right in the market right now. We're going to start by looking at the case. Now, you'll know from, some people will fall in love with the black of the Venom. Some people will kind of loathe it and think it kind of looks old school. Personally, I think it's really cool. I think it's a great color, and I think it really stands out when you're in a meeting and you've got all the other kind of silver looking Macs there, and you whack out your Venom. People look at you different and they go, "What's that?" And they look at the snake logo on the front and wonder what you're up to. A lot of people assume you're a gamer, but for those who obviously know, it's a mark of real excellence. So we're going to take a look at the thinking which has gone into the case, because it's really been like this holistic approach when it comes to designing the Venom BlackBook, and it's the kind of that kind of intensity, I guess, in some regards, or focus, which has really been highlighted to me. Now, what was really cool in making of this video, I got talking to the founder of Venom, a guy called John, and he shared with me a story about Sir David Brailsford, which is, for those who don't know, he used to lead the UK cycling team, and this was for the Olympic Games. So prior to basically 2008, the UK, as a fellow POM, had literally won just one medal in 76 years in the discipline of cycling. And so prior to that, what they undertook, this is Sir Dave as he's known, is literally they started to take apart all the different parts around cycling. So the wheels, the pedals, the handlebars, everything, including the trailer which they transported the bikes in. And they applied this methodology about looking for 1% improvement across all these different areas. And you can envisage that's really meticulous. It takes a real certain mindset. And why the hell would you worry about the trailer which you're transporting the bikes in? Well, as an example, they painted it white because it was easier to see the dust inside. And that meant the more dust was getting onto the bikes, and the dust on the bikes was slowing the bikes down. So, it's that kind of meticulous attention to detail, which, the founder shared with me, because he said it was that story. It was that story about people who are having to compete on the same equipment, but how do they do it, and how do they be different, and how do they be the best? What's extraordinary about the story about the UK cycling team is that in 2008, they went on to actually take out 10 gold medals. They set world records in cycling from, just a few years before. They were a nobody in the cycling scene. And then they went on to repeat that in the UK when it came to London 2012. And not only that, Dave has gone on to lead the first UK cycling team, and he's won 3 races of the 4 that they competed in terms of the Tour de France. So like a knockout story, and I love how that thinking has been applied to the case and actually every single component which we're going to talk about. So let's take a real good look at the case. So, everything inside and outside really rely on what is made, or what this kind of actual unit is made from. The material of the sashi literally affects the cooling, and also the other performance of the components, like the screen and the keyboard and even the acoustics, right? All of that is impacted by the case. A lot of companies have kind of got away with putting headline components into effectively a pizza box, right? And that's how a lot of companies are able to produce, what on paper looks like great products, but ultimately, together it's a bit of a hodgepodge. So, what is the Venom BlackBook made of? Well, it is actually magnesium alloy. So it's the strongest and lightest metal, and then they can mill it with a 5-axis CNC machine. And so that ultimately gives you the 014 Phantom. So magnesium alloy is around 30% lighter by volume than aluminium. And actually being the lightest structurally used material in the world. It also gives a much greater strength to weight ratio at the same time. So what that means is it allows for the body to be thinner than in similar designs, and it's also why the 014 Phantom can have so much more in the same size as what would be very close to a MacBook Air. There's also the freedom that comes with placing components wherever you want in Magnesium, as it's ultimately less thermally conductive. Basically means you don't have burnt thighs when you're trying to use it on a train on the way to London or something like that. I know, I still remember that. You know, when you have to put something underneath your lap or between the computer and your legs. So look, Magnesium is also easier to work with than aluminium in terms of manufacturing and enabling new design capabilities. It's less likely to bend. Carbon fiber, as an example, is actually really brittle when it comes to, and it's not very durable. You know, if you hit or drop it, it can crack, and you have to basically replace the whole thing. So, and that's why the Phantom comes with a magnesium chassis, and you don't actually have to glue things in place. You can literally screw it straight in. And that's a really important point because Apple, Microsoft, HP, they all use glue to put these things in place. Sometimes the chassis is so thin in these competitor laptops that they're trying to, but basically there's no room for allowing that housing to be screwed in. And so they use literally glue. And so if it comes loose, well, then you're screwed, and ironic in terms of the word. But basically most reviewers kind of overlook these aspects because they're just in the too hard basket, right? So, so what does it mean if there's no room to screw is, basically you have to glue, and that can cause a whole heap of problems, in terms of, can make the unit thicker and stuff like that. But also means from a sustainability perspective, it means it's a one-trick pony, right? Once you've used this laptop, then you're gonna have to throw it away. You can't recycle it easily, and ultimately, if you're thinking about it from a let's say a circular economy perspective, it really is it's designing stuff to break, and then to not be able to be repaired, and then so it's forcing you to have to rebuy. So that's the importance of why this material, it costs more, right? And that's the downside. But ultimately, when it comes to the Venom's approach, which is where everything must be worthy of going into the best product, and that then makes a very worthwhile notebook computer. And literally, as they say in their tagline, everything is important. So, it's not just a smart punchline. It's really about that kind of intelligent design. So, again, just to stress this point, and what I love about this whole idea is that someone's actually thought through this process, right? Because if they're going to buy this product off you in 7 years' time, they genuinely want it to work for you, right? And they want it to work for them. Because if they're going to buy it off you, well, they're going to need to be able to recycle and recapture the materials which are in the product itself. And so that bodes really, really well to this whole design, and that kind of gives some insight to just one of the small design intricacies. Not only less heat, and it's easier and lighter and stronger, but it also means it's going to be avoiding being recycled or downcycled or turned into like a toothbrush, or ultimately actually becoming landfill. So some really cool design features around the actual case, which most of us have probably never even considered. With the case then, what that opens up is actually the world of serviceability, right? It means that you can actually take this thing apart. It means it becomes serviceable. It means you can actually upgrade or repair, God forbid, if your computer breaks, And so, try that on the new MacBook or the Surface Pro. It's bonkers. They're glued together, and it's just not easy to replace at all. Even on my HP Envy, which I had before, I had to change the battery on it. It actually wasn't too bad, but even the guy was getting it to do it for me, he was complaining about how it wasn't that easy. They weren't really built for this, and ultimately it was about it was a one-trick pony, right? So on this point here, things like the trying to change the screen on the Surface Pro are a total nightmare. They're glued in. They require a high level of technical skill. And unlike the Dell XPS, Surface, MacBook Pro, HP Spectra, Dragonfly, crikey, you name it, the BlackBook, it does not use proprietary anything. The screws, the drives, the battery, memory are all relatively easily serviceable and upgradable. So that basically means wherever you are in the world, you can find someone to do it quite straightforwardly, right? So, you don't have to transfer data from any old device. If I fill up my memory, I've got 2 terabytes in here. If I fill that up, it's still got room for another 2. It's bonkers. Most computers would have to, go out and buy a new one. So this way, it means that you're not getting those challenges of having to transfer data from old to new, or from failed unit, only to find that your old unit uses some kind of exotic proprietary connection, or worse yet, it's even soldered in. What a nightmare. So, everything, again, this comes back to their tagline, everything is important. So, the other option, which is often argued about when it comes to computers, is modular design, and the idea of having modular parts. Of course, at scale, it starts, the idea is to make sense, but the reality is that getting to that scale is almost impossible because the economics of it become, nonsensical. It means you've actually got a highly wasteful world because you don't know which parts are going to fail most or which are going to be most in demand by consumers. And so actually you can end up over manufacturing parts and different components to be in a scenario where actually it's it goes wasted or it becomes redundant. And so a lot of people kind of tout the benefits of that, that it is the kind of the saving grace. But in our experience, if you really look at the fundamentals of it, it falls over every single time. So what we've got here with the BlackBook then is really about it's upgradable, it's serviceable, and then it's also more meaningful. It's got the option to it's designed for at least 7 years, right? And so with that mindset, it gives you that flexibility. It gives you that becomes a more meaningful product. What are my needs going to be in 7 years' time? Well, it's who knows, right? But it gives me that space and that flexibility to be able to do that if I want to. So, I think that speaks reams to the type of product and the type of, computer which we've got. One of the things which surprised me the most was around the durability and actually the ongoing experience with it, right? So, when you look at it, it looks like it might be quite a weighty laptop, but pick it up and it kind of like you feel like, there's really not much to this. Not only that, because it's magnesium alloy, it feels really quite luxe in your hands. You can feel the screen as it kind of moves around, and it feels like it glides open, and it definitely feels premium in your hand. So, that said, a super interesting thing is that it's actually military standard tested, right? So it's a 810G specifications, and you'll notice that sticker on the actual laptop itself. And so it's been designed to cover and tested in a wide variety of extreme environments. So you can handle drops and shocks and vibration, humidity. And look, it doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be great in the sand dunes of Afghanistan. But ultimately, it is a business laptop, and so it's going to survive being stuffed in the bags and thrown into an airport security tray, or even survive being pushed under some seats or crammed into compartments, right? Or what if you forget it and it's in the back of your car, in the heat or something like that. So look, it's designed to take a lot of abuse, which is really reassuring, right? Because over a 7-year time, it's gonna definitely take a bit of a beating. It's been that military standard is used by the military and across various different industries to validate a product's readiness for harsh and extreme environments. So, you may not think, well, I'm not in the military or even in aviation and aerospace, but for turbulence, fluctuating temperatures, and even pressure can play out in a few minutes. And so, knowing that you've got a computer which can actually handle all of that in its stride, it's very, very reassuring to know that you've got that in your built in. In terms of the screen, it's surprisingly rigid. There's a bit of flex in the material, but as you open it up, you can feel the resistance in the hinge, which kind of makes it feel like it's solid and it's not just going to fly open. But most importantly, and this has been probably the biggest kind of wow factor for me, has been actually the display. So it covers 100% of the Adobe RGB color spectrum with overly bright screens of usually washed out blacks, or brighter does not necessarily mean better in many ways, and often just kind of hurts your eyes to think it's one of those attempts by almost like manufacturers to catch a headline like the brightest screen of all time, and all I'm really interested in is the best I prefer, ultimately the most accurate one, opposed to washed out colors and poor contrast, which is just annoying more than anything. And so I don't think there's much worse to look at than a touchscreen. I've got my iPad, and I often use that on the train or something like that because it's super convenient. But you can quickly end up with heaps of fingerprint marks on it and stuff like that. So I think it's really bold that what Venom have done here is that they've gone for a non-reflective screen, and so this means that you don't have that kind of sometimes glare which you get on the iPad, and it also means that you're not kind of keep reaching out all the time to get to select things like you are on the iPad. Look, I like that sometimes, and it's quite nice for sitting in bed and almost like a magazine, but ultimately those kind of gorilla arms that you end up getting, which kind of get fatigued over time, you just want to be able to use the cursor and rest your hand on your lap. So Venom's basically tried to avoid, it's almost like the Spork like 2-in-1 touchscreen device. Think of the Sporks where they're pretty crap as a spoon and pretty crap as a fork, but just ultimately they're a little bit of nothing. And so it's that average outcome is what Venom have tried to avoid here. And so ultimately it's a clamshell notebook with really good screen, but it's definitely not trying to be a tablet, which I think is for someone like me, you can buy an iPad, which is you'd be hard pressed from my perspective to beat the iPad Pro. I think for me it's been amazing, and being able to use the pencil in that has been terrific. So, but there's more information about that at the shopvenom.com FAQ. So you can have a look at that about the way they look at that kind of functional design. So what's really quite nice about the screen though is the thin bezels, the frame around the edge that really allows for that 14-inch 16:9 ratio screen to make sense. Also gives enough room, kind of proportionally speaking, when you think of the keyboard size and the overall dimensions of the unit. So the panel is FHD, and if you've ever seen a 14-inch screen that's got more than 1920x by 1080p pixels, you'll quickly realise how much of a kind of a useless gimmick it is, right? So it doesn't really make sense in a 14-inch screen other than achieving a good headline often. So look, the perfect resolution, I think they've nailed it in terms of the size of the screen, and that bottom bezel gives the keyboard, it's hard to see kind of the kind of seamless transition, which is really cool. And so I think rather than trying to be something average, they've gone, well, this is what it's designed for, and I think they've stuck to the guns, which I really, really like about the product. And if you definitely want, touchscreen, well, this is not the computer for you, and ultimately I think it's better served on a fully touchscreen orientated something like the iPad. So, ultimately what Venom have done is that they've chosen the best type of screen for the intended use. And then they supply that as standard across the configured series. So you don't get a choice as to what screen you get, because for consistency and for making sure that you get the best experience of the product more broadly, they don't want you kind of picking and choosing as to which one you can have. So if you did that, you could probably end up with getting some Frankenstein results, where extra bright screens or too much battery life, and then people start complaining about it drawing too much. So ultimately it's about best across the board, harmoniously put together, and where everything is important, right? So choosing or pairing the right screen to maximize the performance outcomes is exactly what is really great about this. And so if you compare it to the MacBook, you'll see here, this is my MacBook, and then this is streets ahead. Admittedly, the MacBook is quite old, but I've also put here the iPad comparison too. And so you can see that both screens, I think they perform very, very well, but the non-reflective certainly makes it a bit easier on the eye. At the top of the screen here, you'll find the Windows Hello facial recognition. Basically the best way to unlock a laptop. And so it's fully certified and integrated biometric authentication. It's based on facial recognition. And the BlackBook basically uses a combination of special infrared cameras and software to accurately identify you and guard against kind of spoofing with a photo or webcam or something like that. It also sees an infrared, which is super cool. And when you turn it on, it's got this kind of flashing red light, showing you the kind of scan taking place. And so, this basically means that it can reliably tell the difference between like a photograph or a scan and ultimately a living person. So, the actual storage of the data obviously is usually a concern, and so the BlackBook stores the biometric data that is used to implement Windows Hello securely on the device locally. So it can't be, it doesn't roam around, it's never sent to external devices or servers. So because Windows Hello only stores the biometric identification data on the BlackBook, there's no single collection point for an attacker, who can compromise or steal the biometric data. So, the position of the webcam, I think, is the right place. It's at the top, thankfully. Some manufacturers are putting them on the bottom or lower down somewhere else. The iPad has it on the side, which is a total pain in the bum. Always makes you kind of look like you're looking at somewhere weird, and it's kind of weird neck angle. And so, at the bottom as well, it's awful position and gives people, the up the nose view, especially as we live more and more on Zoom these days. So, the issue with webcams generally across the board when it comes to PCs is actually the space. And so, the reality largely is all that webcams on laptops are not very good. Mac have certainly been able to make some good advancements, but I've often wondered why they seem to be so poor in many regards. And ultimately it's about the room, about the amount of real estate you have at the top of the screen, especially when you're going for kind of thin bezels on the side. This all contributes kind of weirdly, because the thickness is the main problem. So, for example, just take a look at your iPhone, or whatever phone you're using. The iPhone is like this. It's quite thick. It's got the screen, but behind that, it's got the phone and the battery, and it's almost like a small tablet PC. So, a smartphone is thicker than most laptop screens. Not by much, admittedly, but those few millimeters are definitely enough to make a big difference. So, it's because in the clamshell notebook design, the screen is literally just that. It's a screen and the outer case directly behind it. So there's no battery or board like on a phone or a tablet, and there's no room to really put something that requires depth in just one small spot like the webcam at the top. So, the camera lenses need depth, and to provide that light sensor and the lenses for optical zoom, etc., which you can easily fit into a normal phone. So, again, that's why Samsung, I'm sure you'll be familiar, is they start to build out extra lenses on the back, and they've got the kind of stepped out section of their phones to make sure that you get the right depth and things like that. So ultimately, it's the actual thin profile of the computer which is causing ultimately the challenge. I've been using this in Zoom meetings and also for Google Meet, and it's been absolutely fine. Actually, I was initially I thought maybe people could tell, but really, given that by the time you sat watching someone else, it's a kind of a reduced quality image anyway. It's not. It was no problem, and the sound quality, which is also really, really important for online, has been exceptional actually. This is an example of the actual camera on the laptop itself. So you can see it's a lot grainier than that of the iPhone, which I've been using. But you can still see it's good quality in terms of, clearly can pick out all the features. And as long as you've got a strong amount of light, I'm using just a kind of a focused light up here, and normally would have a lot more light than I am. If you can do that, that makes a massive difference and can start to really kind of brighten things up. But in terms of the sound, I'm using the computer sound right now, so you'll also see the differences between the two. On other laptops, you'll find that the lack of ports restricts you from kind of adding an additional webcam. But if you do want that high studio finish, an external webcam can easily be connected, and for kind of professional recording and things like that, and also additional microphones if you want. So that can simultaneously capture the sound. But also there's inbuilt microphones, multiple of them, which kind of helps you with sensitivity and directionality of where the sound's coming from, allowing you to, recording of a dynamic sound in short. So basically it means they're going to hear you well, no matter where you are or how close. And look, we use this in one of the businesses I represent. We put every Monday morning, we do a broad open office meeting, and we just work off my computer, and they're all sat around in different, some many meters away, and the sound has been very, very crisp. In terms of the speakers, they're actually positioned on the bottom side of the laptop, as you'll see here. Initially I was a bit concerned about the speakers because I've read a couple of reviews actually about the speaker quality not being so great. In my experience, I actually found it quite good. It's quite noisy, it's quite loud, I can listen to music quite comfortably. I think what's really good about it is because they're underneath, they can reflect off a hard surface. If you are needing a bit more volume, making sure you're on the right surface is probably going to be key to getting the full benefit of the speakers themselves. Again, it's not going to be any Bose or any high-end experience given what's available in the market, but of course this is a laptop, and but certainly good enough for most things you'll be ever listening to, at least from it. But again, the Bluetooth connectivity can allow you to that flexibility and that freedom to add in additional speakers or link into your kind of broader home network if that's something you want to do. I've been using the BlackBook for a few weeks now, and the keyboard has been a real standout for me. The chassis is probably what gives it such a fine quality feel, because it feels really rigid, and probably contrasts well to the MacBook Pro or even the Dell XPS 13. Actually HP as well. The equivalents, which they have short, snappy keys. The issue I faced is when I get into the rhythm of writing something, I really want that almost old school flow. You could achieve on almost a proper quality keyboard. That long form writing is pretty much where it's at for me. So, the BlackBook seems to be tuned for both snappy, quick writing, as well as allowing me to type in a way that makes it more natural flow when I get going. So, I think it's been really fast, and it's been enjoyable to work with. I know people can be quite particular about actually the keyboard, and I definitely don't want to be one of those people with an external keyboard and carrying that around. That sounds like a pain in the butt to me. So it's thin, it's light, and the keyboard makes it really, really great, especially contrasts well to. It feels like you're working off a proper one. So. It's also backlit, which is super helpful when I'm working late at night on the couch or something like that. I found the multiple lighting levels quite helpful. Depending on how tired I am, maybe I can't handle the brightness, and so you can dim that. And the same thing with the screen, you can dim it up and down. And again, super helpful if you don't want to have the bright lights of the room on, or if you've got kids sleeping next door or something like that. The touchpad is just a touch bigger than the same. Which you find on the Dell XPS. I think the same for the HP Envy and the Spectre and the Elite, and noticeably bigger than the Surface Pro touchpad, which I am not a fan of. It's a touch smaller than the kind of MacBook touchpad, but the newer MacBooks have that really large touchpad that leave no space between the spacebar and trackpad. And the Phantom has a precision touchpad from Microsoft, and that's certified and standardized touchpad intended to boost productivity. A lot of people might prefer an external mouse if you're working for a long time. Personally, that's not something I do. But ultimately, it's all driven by the hardware, which are now controlled by Windows. So all of the zooming in and out and scrolling functions are super easy to do with 2 or even 3 fingers, depending on the function you're after. So it's also super silent. When you click it, you can touch it, and there's literally no noise. So you don't hear that kind of annoying clunk, which is what my HP used to have, and similar to my old MacBook Air. So that's a nice touch, and I think it's it's kind of almost stealthy how that's been designed. So it's a great setup, and I think I found it super sharp in terms of its accuracy. And you could use an external mouse if you choose, but from my perspective, it's been excellent. Getting onto the weight now. Remember, we're just talking about a very thin and light ultra portable here, so weighs just 1 kilogram. And so, that's 2.2 pounds for the Americans amongst us, not 2 kilograms, which is 4.5 pounds. So, anybody could kind of do all the things we're talking about if it was basically twice the weight. The 014 Phantom has a massive 73 watt-hour battery, which is huge for a 14-inch device. Now, they could have easily put in a much smaller battery, of course, it's half the size, and actually still achieve that marketable 8 to 10 hours, which you see in most places. What would have been nuts, however, is that had they done that, they would have actually been able to gain the title and the ability to call this the lightest laptop in the world. Now imagine that, you're a company which has got that opportunity, but they, because of their mindset and approach, they chose to actually put in a battery which was provided premium and superior performance, and actually at the cost of the weight. So they don't have that title because ultimately it's much more important about performance rather than necessarily being the lightest laptop in the world. So, some manufacturers make it an optional upgrade. In the Venom world, this is as standard. And so it's very much what I love about this kind of ethos behind this design. It's not just a slogan. It's really at the core, and every decision they've made is ultimately what they're trying to achieve here. That no compromise, that they don't want to experiment on their customers, and that they want to make sure that you get a premium experience and such a high quality outcome. So, I think that's really admirable for a company and in a tech world where everyone's trying to be the lightest and something like that. So I think that's really, really cool. Ultimately, it makes it more portable, and you get better outcomes. So, when it comes to the actual battery life, of course, I've been able to get, I think, somewhere between 12 to 14 hours on a standard charge. At the moment, what I'm using, I take it to work with me, plug it in there, and then plug it at home. So it's not too much of a concern. But given what's great is when we can start traveling again, I know that I don't have to go to the airport and worry about having to plug in or trying to sit next, hug a pillar, as it were, to try and get access to one of the plugs. You know what that's like. And so, obviously it's going to really depend on what you do and how you do it. And I'm told if you choke the processor, kind of dim the screen to where it's barely observable, turn off the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that kind of stuff, and the backlit keyboard, you'll get like an insane 30 hours of battery life. But apocalyptic scenario, it may be suitable if you're stuck at the airport somewhere, but most of the time you're going to be able to get power before that, right? So, on a normalist setting, they claim about 15 hours, which I think would be about fair. So, again, it depends on if you're watching videos and sound like I have been. That tends to, of course, drain the battery quicker. Video playback, of course, is going to change how the battery performs quite significantly. But you can select from a couple of preset settings which allow you to kind of dial back that energy use or energy consumption to kind of quieter, stealthier modes or kind of higher performance outcomes if you want. So ultimately, it's a very quiet machine, just so you know. You won't even notice it. It's certainly not like the old school where they kind of hear the fan kicking in and stuff like that. So it also comes with flexi charge. I'm not sure if you'll know much about this, but this was certainly news to me. And this is where every time you charge a battery to 100%, it can start to degrade the actual life of the battery. And so flexi chargers sit separately outside of the Microsoft kind of ecosystem. And actually allows you to adjust the way the battery gets charged. So if you, as you open it up and you hold down F2, you can enter the BIOS and you can navigate to the advanced and then the advanced chipset control. All of this kind of sits within, as I said, the BlackBook side of things, not Windows. And so the flexi charger then enables the two submenus, which will appear where the user can set the desired starting charge range and the stopping charge range. So the wider the range, basically the longer the battery will last for, because the battery isn't going to charge itself every single time. It's plugged in by default. So this is simply, super smart tech that Venom has incorporated with the flexi charge. And that kind of translates really well into the fact that you get two chargers with the product as standard. If you think about it, I'm always with my with the MacBook and the HP Envy, I'm lugging around the charger. They're kind of the most cumbersome part, right? And so that's super frustrating if you're using one laptop, and especially I'm going between different clients' offices and things like that. So in a day and age when manufacturers are taking chargers out, I know Apple don't even include chargers in their phones and things like that anymore. I think what's being forgotten is the convenience there. And so with the two chargers, you can have one at home and you can have one at work, especially if you want to kind of wind it around the table leg and things like that. And the question is why they do this, and it comes back to the user-centric approach Venom have to their design and their approach. And you can check out the data they've captured here on the venomcomputers.com.au/survey results tab. And ultimately, this allows you to see what their customer feedback has been. All of this data is publicly available. So you can see that what they started to identify is that each customer would typically within a couple of weeks order a second charger. And so that would mean that they then have to try and get this charger coming from sometimes a different country, and there's a delay and there's a general frustration around this piece. And so, what they decided to do is just to make sure you've got both in there for you from the start, because waiting for another charger just to kind of get there, and 9 out of 10 times being the case that's going to be the scenario. I think that's a really smart addition. So, I think it's what's good about the chargers too is really they haven't tried to kind of make it proprietary, where you can't get it, you have to buy the Apple charging cable. That's a pain in the bum, right? So this way you can simply get it to connect to the computer, but if you travel around the world, all you got to do is buy a slightly different power cable. So that plugs straight into the transformer and then the power cord part, and then you can kind of just get that changed all around the world. Look, and of course, it doesn't mean, shopvenom.com will allow you the freedom to buy these directly from them if you want, but arguably, the big boys or there's lots of companies which have got this kind of same technology in this space. So you don't, it's cheap and readily available, regardless of wherever in the world you are. Just make sure you're getting the right kind of tip voltage and the watts, and basically you're a way to go. So, I think that's, again, a clever play by Venom to make sure that you've got that flexibility. You're not kind of hamstrung, and they're not trying to compete or play in that world of proprietary where they're trying, actually, as an end user, it's ultimately a pain in the butt trying to work all those things around. So props to Venom on that one for sure. Along this same line of thinking is this little black box. This comes included with every Venom, and I think it's a really smart piece of tech. So it's called the USB recovery drive, as you can see there. And inside you end up with the little USB stick. And this can plug in and help you kind of recover your whole system. You've got the instructions there on the packet as well. So super handy little piece of kit. And so look, a lot of people wonder why this isn't included in other computers, because ultimately this will allow you to reset your whole thing. But if you think about it, this costs about $20-25, something like that, if included in every notebook. And if every manufacturer did that, then it's going to compound, and they're going to be left with a bill of $200 million just to pick up something basic, right? But they often think that the call center, and if you do the numbers on it, of course, a call center is going to be a lot cheaper to implement rather than that kind of scenario. But it doesn't actually take away the pain in the butt for the customer, because clearly they don't value your time as much as they value theirs. And so I think this is a really clever thing to do. Ultimately, it means that you can have, if you've performed an upgrade or you've tried to change something or add an external drive, or even in 3, 4, 5 years, something like that, you can bring your computer back to factory settings, straight away. No problems. You don't have to worry about any issues, and there's no one to call, and no kind of annoying offshore outfit to try and navigate to try and get what you're after. So I think it's a really clever way to do things. And so again, the power's in your hands. It's about customer first. And ultimately it's from what I understand, the number one reason why people contact customer support, and it's to do things like this. And so, the Venom have basically included this at their cost to make sure that you don't have to contact anyone and you can get straight to it if you need to. Talking of tech support, Venom have got a team, a global team, which you can tap into at your convenience. So they do things a little bit differently when it comes to support, so I'll just talk you through it. So ultimately, when you get your BlackBook, you can register it on the venomhelpdesk.com, and they don't share your data with shopvenom.com to protect your privacy, so you need to do that separately. Once your BlackBook is registered though, you have access to a world of that support. So this may not suit everyone, but if you use it the way it's intended, I think it's really, really great. Firstly, if your time is valuable and you're not gonna wanna sit on the phone waiting to be transferred around or to someone to try and figure out what the hell has gone wrong, and then, the better way to do it, what Venom think, is that you can open a ticket, right? So at your convenience, you can then add an image if you need to, and then receive written step-by-step instructions back on how you can actually resolve the problem. Next level from there is actually Venom might actually end up calling you at a time when convenient. They can access your computer remotely and see what they can be done. And failing that, Venom will literally pick up your BlackBook, have it repaired and returned to you via the same DHL Express courier that was used when you made your initial purchase. So, obviously, if that was happening a lot, there's no way they could do that. And so it speaks reams that they can afford to do that because it's not happening very often. So I think that says a lot. Now, we've covered a lot so far, but let's start with my favorite. The speed of this machine is bonkers. That is insanely fast, especially the SSD, right? I mean, so fast, it literally clocks 7,000 megabytes per second when I run Crystal Disk. To appreciate that for people who may not know, that's about 2.5 times quicker than Apple, and Dell and HP are sometimes between 2 and 4 times slower than this. So, I just think from a productivity, a satisfied user perspective, speed in a machine, you want it to feel instantaneous. I hate that kind of click and the ponder, when's it gonna load, which I'm so used to from the other machines. So, ultimately I was, why does this matter? And it's, a lot of you will know from different applications today accessing the data sets. If you think about your folder system, they're largely, they're stored in kind of giant rusty filing cabinets, right? And even if, people accessing those filing cabinets are moving quickly, and that's ultimately your CPU, if they're buckled, rusty, twisted filing cabinets that are hard to open, it doesn't matter, how good or how fast the people around you are moving, it's still going to take forever to end up getting access to your folder. So, memory and RAM is when you basically need to grab multiple folders, and while you're reading them, access more and hold on to more and kind of things like the craziness, right? So if the files can be accessed and read quickly, it literally takes the load off all the processor and the memory, and that right there is basically the magic and secret of the harmonious design that the Venom is all about, right? So it's not about one component doing the heavy lifting. It means you've got a balanced system that isn't going to be stressed out and pushed, and there's no kind of single point of failure. That also means that the fans are more likely to kick in and the processor is pushing harder, and that means you're going to drain more battery life. And so, so the question often is how fast are the solid state drives in the BlackBook Zero 14 Phantom book? Fast, I mean really freaking fast, actually the fastest commercially available from what I'm told. And so, they're rated to run at 7,000 megabytes per second. Crystal Mark tests show that they're reading about 6,400. And then the type of SSD Venom use are rated to something of the longest lasting SSD money can buy. So look, in the past, storage was achieved by mechanical spinning plates, similar to what you'd see in those kind of LP record players, which my parents used to use, right? In your smartphone, it's obviously got a lot more better and reliable and cheaper but the only issue is if you lose your data to like malicious software or to an electrical charge or liquid, then you're actually in a lot of trouble. So, and it can be super hard to recover. So, since 2010, Venom have actually used solid state drive. And in this, its future-proofing method has also been a major contributor to why their systems have been able to remain relevant, while most of their users can keep using the computers 5 years, 7 years down the track, and can also be traded and actually be of use or of value to the company buying them back. So the Phantom has 2 slots, and those 2 physically separate drives. The primary will support up to 7,000 megabytes per second, and the secondary will support up to 3,500 megabytes per second. So having 2 physically isolated drives mean you can basically put your applications on one and then your data on the other. And so you can simply use one drive for business or the other for personal and run the second drive almost like your own personal local backup drive, which, in the world of, cloud storage these days, sometimes it's nice to know that your data is secure and it's on your machine and you're the only one who's got access to it, rather than worrying about what Google or Microsoft or Apple are in fact up to. So ultimately the drives Venom use are non-proprietary drives, and any high quality NVMe M2 drive will work. So you can easily pop off the back and put in a drive yourself at a later date, or take your existing drive out yourself. So the factory configured options that Venom offer on the shopvenom.com provide exceptional value already, because if you calculate the cost for this grade drive, it's actually slightly cheaper to buy the spec'd out version from shopvenom.com. Now, especially when you factor in the memory in as it goes for the higher stock configuration. So, mind you, flash memory with time does always get cheaper, right? So 2-3 years down the track, it'll probably be cheaper to upgrade it yourself if you need. And of course, the whole design will allow you to do that, especially if you're that way inclined. But when it comes to memory, there's really little known facts that this is something that Venom's been doing for a long time. In fact, since they started, they use the low density memory modules. Besides the obvious clock speed that is advertised by a lot of manufacturers, and the point that is often overlooked is that it's actually the density of the module, right? And what does that mean though? Well, if you think of a memory module on an actual wafer, that's what the memory integrated circuits are mounted onto. The actual individual chips are the actual memory chips, right? So fewer chips with more memory are called high density and low density modules. Have more RAM chips with less memory each in comparison. So, if you take the same 16 gigabytes module, for example, may have like 4x4 modules, 8x2, or even 16x1, you may think the less chips, the faster. But actually, think of it like having lots of people simultaneously being able to grab a file out of a filing cabinet, as opposed to a few people or just one person trying to get the same amount of files. Like the more people grabbing the files faster, you can retrieve more files, as opposed to just one person trying to grab many files all at once. Right? You can see how crazy that could be. And even if that person's super fast, they're just not going to be as fast as like 8 people who are slowly trying to take out the files at once, right? And look, this is where I think Venom do this really well, because they provide 8 gigabytes on board to save space and power, and have the additional slot to allow for for their high-speed, low-density module to be placed within as well. So it's upgradable and future-proof. And the more memory your BlackBook has, the faster it's simply going to be able to access those files and allow for multiple windows open at once, and pages in your browser, whatever. They'll open fast, and you basically can keep more open as well. So I know my wife would love that function, given that she's a bit of a tab fiend when it comes to using Excel or even Chrome. graphics in the past, having a separate kind of dedicated graphics card made sense. You could take the processing away from any images, from the CPU and just do it via a dedicated processor. So, but technology has obviously come a very long way these days. And that means that ultra-portables typically, if designed correctly, no longer really require a dedicated graphics card, because if the work you're doing does not require 3D rendering, basically. And so, integrated graphics used to have a bad reputation, but it's not so much the case anymore, right? So you've got dedicated graphics cards that use a lot more power, typically like 6 to 7 times more than the power used by the CPU. And that's especially the one inside the 014 Phantom. So it makes sense not to include it, as it would need to make it a much bulkier and heavier system if it did. And that's ultimately what the Venom's MuscleBook range, the BlackBook Pro series, is exactly for. So for those gaming enthusiasts. So you will need a dedicated graphics for serious gaming and VR, as well as 3D animating, CAD, and some serious video editing. So the Intel Iris Xe graphics accelerator found within the 014 Phantom will work fine for casual gaming and for the Adobe suite as well. Also for Adobe Premiere, it's even good for even like 4K video. So here's a quick chart of the playable titles with the Venom BlackBook 14 Phantom. And I mention games because if they can do these games, they can do any productivity application you most likely use, right? So the following titles here are literally, have their corresponding frame rates at which they can be played too. So colorizing photos, photo tagging, for example, 1,000 photos takes about 31 seconds. Resizing photos and video encoding is also super fast. For example, if you were to use Adobe Premiere, encoding for about 400 megabytes for an MP4 to a smaller 37 megabyte file, it takes an impressive 60 seconds. So when you consider this is not a dedicated graphics card, but an integrated graphics processing unit that kind of works alongside your processor, you have a work machine that can effectively also game. So this is the perfect graphics processor for an ultra-portable. This all assists with the multitasking, which is especially helpful with remote work, which I know we're all doing at the moment. And high fidelity video calling, especially when there's low bandwidth. And it's also why the 014 can support 3 screens, 2 externally, and it can even have its own screen natively without a docking station via the inbuilt ports, which we'll go through later. And so ultimately, a dedicated gaming laptop of the same price is going to provide superior graphical capabilities. And anyone other than a 3D modeler, serious video editor, or a full-time gamer is going to be seriously happy with the performance on tap here. Remember, this is not a gaming laptop. This is a different class of machine for business and productivity with excellent cooling properties, designed with the excellent thermodynamic properties as well. So, there's really no trade-offs here with the ultra-portables, especially when you consider the size, the weight, battery life, and even the power supply and overall functionality. What you're gaining again with the Phantom are the ports. So, let's start with the also important USB Type A. Now, this is the USB port that almost everyone's familiar with. It lets you plug in pretty much anything you want without having to carry around the dongles or the port replicators or the docking stations. So, there's a backward compatible USB port Type A here on the right-hand side, as well as one here on the left-hand side. And so, this is super helpful, especially if you're left-handed, or you can plug in a thumb drive or your external mouse or keyboard to use it pretty much like a desktop computer, which helps if you're at your desk for a while, right? It will also work with older USB devices, and right in front of the USB port on the right-hand side is the Kensington lock. Super helpful if you've got security cables, or if in your office you require it to lock it up for some reason. And then back down this way, you've actually got the headphone and microphone jack, which will allow you to connect the headset, which has been kicking around for so long, or headphones or speakers or microphone, which you might be using externally. And that's super handy because we've all got those things lying around, and it also means you don't have to kind of give up a port as some of the manufacturers kind of force you to do so. You also don't need to buy any more equipment to do the same thing. I love how Venom have just left these ports in here. It makes it more timeless. And further back away from the screen, there's also the handy micro SD reader. So if you use a dash cam or maybe a drone, a GoPro, a Nintendo Switch, or even your phone if it's got external memory slot, you can use one of those cards and put it in here and read it straight away. You might, if you want, you can also store extra files, again on a separate non-integrated drive, without having anything hanging out. You can use this slot. Micro SD memory is heaps faster than before, and it's cheap. It's perfect for storing those non-critical files that you're not going to be constantly reading. In front of the micro SD slot is the power button. It may need some getting used to kind of being there, but there is a reason it's there, and putting the power button at the top near the delete key in some other designs has actually caused people to kind of accidentally press the power button. I know I've done that once or twice, and I've seen many manufacturers do this, and it means this way on the side you can't accidentally press it. It's also, there's a dedicated button, so it doesn't cause any confusion about when you're trying to turn it on. Back over now to the left-hand side, at the top nearest to the screen is the power connector. It's a dedicated connection that is only there for the power adapter to connect to. So unlike other manufacturers who've removed this connection and decided to charge via the USB Type C ports, which by doing so removes the ability to have access to the port for other devices, which I find to be a bizarre solution, especially if a laptop only has two USB Type C ports as its only ports. But anyway, that is what it is. The next port is the old faithful full-size HDMI port. Yep, full size. I love this one, especially because I can get to my meeting room and I plug straight in rather than having to scramble around in my bag trying to work out where my adapter is. So there's no messing about here. And what we found, wherever you go, a monitor is pretty much likely to run off the HDMI cable. It's a real godsend. I mean, why would you not have this functionality? It's bonkers. We're all using remote connections into TVs and into computers these days, and so it certainly makes it a very helpful section. Next is the USB Type A port I covered earlier that mirrors the one on the right hand side, and following this is probably one of the most useful and powerful ports you can utilize. Actually, it's a USB Type C port that is also an all-powerful Thunderbolt 4 port. So what can you do with this? I guess is the question. Well, firstly, Thunderbolt 4.0 means you now have 40 gigabytes per second bi-directional bandwidth. That means data can be moved to and from external storage quickly, and that up to 5 Thunderbolt devices can be connected for flexible device configurations, all powered by the one port. So this same port is also compatible with previous versions of Thunderbolt. That might be USB, DisplayPort, PCIe, and fits standard USB-C type connections as well. Venom have designed this to transfer data and video signals, so you can use this to also send a signal to an external 4K monitor, which is really helpful. This one port can connect up to 2 4K 60 Hz display ports or HDMI monitors through a compatible dock or an adapter. The Thunderbolt designated monitors can also be directly connected too. So if you want, you can also connect a high-speed external Thunderbolt SSD to expand storage and achieve speeds on par with the internal drive. So you can connect other USB peripherals like the mice, keyboards, controller headsets, and PCI Express devices by utilizing a PCIe expansion chassis to access compatible PCIe devices, such as kind of video capture devices for live streaming or gaming play. And ultimately, you can use it for networking by connecting to high-speed 10 gigabit Ethernet networks via an adapter, or use a Thunderbolt cable to connect to two computers over a peer-to-peer network. So this allows for transferring large volumes of data from one PC to another. And it's also worth mentioning that the Phantom will work with any DisplayLink certified or Thunderbolt certified dock. So, bring on those co-working spaces with that functionality. It's certainly kind of set up and ready to go. So, you can turn this Phantom into a fully fledged desktop experience. You can seamlessly transition from a full portable experience to a great desktop experience for kind of some super real productive working. From a connectivity perspective, the Venom comes with Wi-Fi 6, which is the new, and not even broadly advertised at this point, but it's the new wireless connectivity standard which is coming, at least at this time of this video. And so, I would deem it to be one of the best, especially Intel's AX201 card. Typically Venom use Intel for this because wherever there's a driver update or a security concern, Microsoft and Intel work on fixing this as quickly as possible with live updates, and they also tend to be the most secure. So, I wouldn't worry about backwards compatibility because that's all taken care of. But with the right Wi-Fi 6 router or hotspot, you also find it's going to be 3 times faster than the previous 802.11ac connection. So this new technology relieves network congestions while simultaneously proving great client capacity, all on lower power consumption. So it's a big upgrade from what's been available right now. And for example, if someone is sharing the same hotspot as you and is maybe streaming a movie, and someone else is on a social media and the other checking their email, the router will assign channels to each device based on when it needs it most. So, the 014 also uses target wake up time, which means it can determine when it's best to wake up and start sending and receiving data, contributing to a longer battery life too. So the new wireless standard also takes a massive advantage of the previously unused radio frequencies that are faster than the currently typical 2.4 gigahertz. And the data streams on this card have basically multiple uplink and downlink streams that stream data simultaneously rather than sequentially. This same card also includes Bluetooth 5.2, which has LE audio support. And LE is a new high quality, lower power audio codec that you'll see starting to roll out in kind of 2021, 2022 by various headphone and speaker manufacturers as that becomes more kind of broadly adopted. 014 Phantom also has the TMP 2.0, which is the recently announced international standard for a secure cryptographic processor designed to secure hardware through integrated cryptographic keys. The purpose ultimately is to ensure the integrity of a platform so that the system behaves as intended. So, the computer programs which use this can use the TMP, TPM, to authenticate hardware devices, since each TPM chip has a unique and also secret endorsement key burned into it as it's produced. So pushing down the security to the hardware level provides a lot more protection than just a software-only solution. And it's actually the United States Department of Defense that created the whole standard in the first place. This links well into Windows 11, which will be coming, not in the not too distant future. Windows 11 will require the TPM 2.0, and you will be able to transition and use Windows 11 for free if you choose to do so, as the upgrade is included when you buy a 014 Phantom. When Windows 11 is released, your BlackBook will literally prompt you and ask you if you wish to transition to Windows 11 for free. Now, I'd probably wait 6 months or so until the release has been kind of go through the initial ironing out the bugs process which Windows will be adopting. Ultimately, there'll be millions of users who will be transitioning first, and and whatever their problems they experience, Microsoft will fix and deploy the new updates. And so it just means you don't have to go and code through that kind of painful learning process on behalf of Microsoft. You're probably wondering how noisy or hot does it get? Well, the fan is positioned over here in between the screen and the keyboard. So when the screen's open, and that's the only way the unit can be on, the inlet and the outlet exhaust face the rear of the machine. So not your hand, and the exhaust vents on the side typically only end up hitting your hand anyway. So the fan speeds, as mentioned before, can be adjusted and controlled by the inbuilt control panel. And basically Venom have provided that so you can play around with it depending on what you're doing. So if you needed to tone it back a bit, then that's easy to do as well. Now, if you've come this far in the video, you've probably worked out already that these are not cheap computers. And we're talking kind of Apple, Microsoft Surface, Dell XPS pricing, right? However, if you actually compare like for like configurations, you're always going to get more bang for your buck with Venom, especially when you configure them with 16 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, and beyond. And so it's really, that's not even including all the 1% differences across the board and the kind of harmonious design and the everything's important ideology, which is kind of behind all this. So, if you're shopping in this price range, however, I've not been able to find better options elsewhere. So I personally believe these are ultimately the best ultra-portable laptops in the market right now. And as mentioned at the start of this video, you can pay in different currencies, and so there's a whole bunch of different options there. And I'd be looking at the mid to higher end specifications as to where the performance and the best value kind of interlink. Venom also have a very different warranty process, which is probably going to be a lot fairer and open to what you may be used to. So, the length of time is deemed to be under a fair and reasonable period. So I'll explain it in more detail and actually specifically direct you to the shopvenom.com page, so you can see exactly what they say about this. So, every BlackBook purchased through the online store comes with a global warranty, and ultimately, in the unlikely event that you're going to need your BlackBook repaired, they'll actually pick it up, repair it, and return it to you at no cost, right? And so, they also use the super high-speed courier as well, which is just a bonus in that it gets taken care of pretty quick smart. So the full tech support behind those is obviously provided during the warranty period. And in relation to the general support, as long as your BlackBook is functioning for its intended purpose, they'll literally continue to help you via venomhelpdesk.com past your warranty period. So everyone always asks, how long is the Venom warranty? Well, Venom believes basically every BlackBook should last a fair and reasonable amount of time. And what does that mean? Well, it means that if a BlackBook is used properly and used for its intended purpose, kept clean, and it should last a long time. So if it's not being dropped or damaged, typically they will honor warranty for any BlackBook for 3 years. That excludes the battery, as batteries are consumable and will over time deplete. Now, Venom don't offer an extended warranty, fundamentally because they believe they're not actually adding anything to the computer at the time of sale. So, for this, it means that the product will last longer than a normal purchase anyway. And so their perspective is that by charging you for an extra warranty, you're not getting anything extra because the product is already designed to last for a long time. So and far longer than what's normal in the market, right? So they see that charging or taking someone's money for an extended warranty is really kind of just being somewhat dishonest. So it's not available, but of course it's, that it does fall back onto their normal fair and reasonable approach, which is, as I've said, it's around 3 years, which I think is a great way to handle it. Although you will notice it's very different to how a lot of people, and especially what people are used to, and especially what's the norm in this kind of computer hardware market. Now, don't forget their legendary trading program where, you're a customer today, but you're actually their supplier tomorrow. And, meaning that it's one of those where you can buy one of these, and as long as you look after it and it continues to work, they'll actually pay you cash in 7 years' time post purchasing your next BlackBook, right? So it basically means that when you buy a new one, they'll give you some time, up to 30 days, to actually transfer your files and things like that and make sure it's all working correctly and to how you want to set it up, which is, let's be fair, that's the most painful part about buying a new computer, right? Transferring data and making sure it's all set up. And then once you've done that, you can ship it back and you'll literally get $500 in your account, courtesy of Venom. It just has to turn on and boot into Windows. That's it. That's the only requirement. So ultimately, what do? Well, of course, they're going to securely wipe the computer, and then typically they on-sell it to a market which is open to using a computer which is ultimately a much later or older technology. And so importantly though, it's not going to be turned into landfill, and it's not going to be turned into a soda can, just because the energy used to do those things is just kind of pointless anyway, right? So I feel like that's one of the computer manufacturers really kind of thought around the whole process and made sure that it's the best solution possible. It's not exactly imperfect, but ultimately it's the best solution possible for this kind of e-waste, which is a major issue which we're facing across the planet. Now, there's not many industries which are more competitive than computer hardware, right? And it's amazing to see it. All the information which is out there, it can be really hard to digest and even kind of get your head around, right? And so I hope, if you've made it this far in the video, I hope you found the extra detail we've gone into useful. I certainly have put a lot of work into researching this and speaking directly with Venom, who've been very helpful in kind of helping me access the right bits of information to make sure you can understand the type of purchase and what you're actually buying into. It's far more than just a computer. It's far more than just kind of a quickly assembled idea. It's really a well thought through product, which is designed from its core to make sure that everything is important and that everything kind of works in its harmony and everything is designed to produce the best outcome for people like you. And that is why I have chosen to become a customer of this company. So we look forward to hearing your feedback on this video. Please reach out if you think it has been helpful. And do get in contact if you've got any questions, any which I can't answer directly. I'll make sure I link in the Venom team, and I'm sure they'd be happy to reach out and answer specific questions you might have. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope if you are considering a purchase into the Zero 14 Phantom, that this review has been helpful to you. But thanks so much for watching.